BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Chris Aldridge. Good evening. The battle to replace Theresa May has begun, with one of the candidates accusing Boris Johnson of offering a damaging and dishonest Brexit plan. People in Ireland appear to have voted overwhelmingly in favour of liberalising divorce laws. In sport, Celtic are celebrating an unprecedented treble. One of the candidates to become the next Prime Minister has severely criticised the favourite Boris Johnson, declaring he wouldn't join a government led by him. The International Development Secretary Rory Stewart said he couldn't serve under Mr Johnson because he supported a no-deal Brexit. His intervention, just a day after Theresa May's resignation announcement, has exposed the bitter divisions that will shape the Conservative leadership race. In a further development, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, became the fifth candidate to declare he would run. He pledged to be more honest about the trade-offs needed to deliver Brexit. Here's our political correspondent, Tom Barton.
The bookies' favourite and popular with party members, Boris Johnson is widely seen as the front-runner in the upcoming Tory leadership election. But these contests have a habit of throwing up surprises, and the former Foreign Secretary will have to clear the not insignificant hurdle of gaining enough support among the party's MPs before his name can appear as one of two on a ballot paper sent out to party members. And in Parliament, he's not universally popular. One of his opponents, Rory Stewart, the International Development Secretary, made clear on the Today programme this morning that he would refuse to serve in a government led by Boris Johnson that pursued a no-deal Brexit.
I think it would be a huge mistake, damaging, unnecessary, and I think also dishonest. I spoke to Boris, I suppose, 2 weeks ago about this, and I thought at the time he had assured me that he wouldn't push for a no-deal Brexit, but it now seems that he's coming out for a no-deal Brexit.
That perspective drew scorn today from the prominent Brexit campaigner and former party leader, Ian Duncan-Smith.
Your job as candidate is to pitch the reasons why you will be the leader. And if your pitch is that you can unify the party, it's hardly a recipe for unification if the answer to the first question is, I won't serve under that particular individual.
Reaching out to the various factions of the Conservative Party will be key for candidates hoping to make it on to the ballot of party members. Amber Rudd, the de facto leader of the recently formed centre-right One Nation grouping, has ruled herself out of running for the top job and is seen by many as a potential kingmaker. A former Remain campaigner, she has kept open the possibility of serving under any of the potential winners, including Boris Johnson. Although, speaking on Today, she refused to say whether or not she believed he was an honest politician.
There are some very good candidates out there.
Do you believe he's an honest politician?
There are some very good candidates out there, Justin.
Do you believe he's an honest politician? It's a simple question.
And I'm going to give you my answer. I'm not going to start maligning any of my colleagues. We've got a leadership race on. This is a really serious moment for the country. I want to hear what their solution is.
Theresa May will remain in number 10 until the end of July. The biggest question facing those who hope to replace her is whether they can avoid repeating her dramatic failure to unite the party or the country around their vision for Brexit.
Labour has said it will seek an immediate vote of no confidence in the new Prime Minister when they take office to try to force a general election. The Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell predicted that the Commons would support some form of public vote if the next Conservative leader pursued a no-deal Brexit. Mr McDonnell told the Today programme that Labour would have to change its own Brexit policy, which has been criticised as muddled.
The world has changed yesterday. We need to have another conversation within our own political party, with our MPs and with our members and supporters about a new way forward. And I think the debate will be had about, do we go back and negotiate and then put a negotiated deal to the British people, or do we simply go for Remain? And that will be a debate within our party no matter what.
People in the Irish Republic are thought to have voted by an overwhelming majority to liberalise the country's divorce law. Counting is continuing after a referendum held yesterday, but an exit poll for the national broadcaster RTE suggests 87% voted in favour of cutting the time a couple must wait for a divorce from 4 years to 2. Our Ireland correspondent Chris Page reports.
Few developed countries, if any, have liberalised laws on social issues as rapidly as Ireland in the past few decades. Divorce was legalised only in 1995, the change narrowly backed in a referendum with 50.3% in favour. The Catholic Church had long been the dominant force in society, but its authority has collapsed in the wake of numerous child abuse scandals. Since 2015, people in Ireland have voted to allow same-sex marriage and abortion. The latest referendum has been about taking divorce law out of the Constitution to allow Parliament to change it. Currently, couples can apply for a divorce if they've been separated for 4 years. The government, led by Leo Varadkar, has indicated it'll shorten the time frame to 2 years. These voters believe that would be a positive step.
4 years is too long. I've seen too many people who have struggled with that.
It's too long for a couple to be living apart, staying in a limbo.
I don't believe that people should have to wait to get divorced. If they want to get divorced, they should get divorced.
The Church argued against the change, saying it would undermine marriage and push up Ireland's divorce rate, which is very low by European standards. But the vote has marked another stage in the huge political and legal shifts which secularisation has brought about.
A British climber has died on Everest, taking the total number of deaths there in the past week to 10. Robin Fisher, who was 44, reportedly fell ill while returning from the summit. In a statement, his family described him as an aspirational adventurer. Andy Moore reports.
Mr. Fisher was posting regular updates from his Everest trip. 6 days ago, he was filming as he climbed with his lifetime's goal in sight.
And up to our left, we can see Everest.
Mr. Fisher reached the top of the mountain this morning, but then collapsed on the way down. Murari Sharma is the managing director of the company that organised the expedition.
After the summit, they came down just below the 150 meter, that's about 8,700 meter. He was just fell down. And then our Sherpa tried to wake up him, but couldn't come, and he tried to give the more oxygen and the water, but he didn't respond.
There have been at least 10 deaths on Everest this year. Some say overcrowding has led to delays on the slopes, with climbers suffering dehydration and exhaustion. There's also been criticism of tour companies who will accept anyone on their expedition so long as they can pay. Mr. Fisher was an experienced adventurer who had climbed Mont Blanc and Aconcagua, the highest mountain in South America. His family said he lived life to the full and had achieved so much.
The number of migrants arriving in the UK on small boats this month has reached 140. That's higher than the figure in December, when the Home Secretary Sajid Javid declared a major incident. 8 migrants, describing themselves as Iranian and Afghan, were picked up in the Channel today by Border Force officials and taken to Dover for health checks and questioning. A senior Labour politician has criticised a call by the Metropolitan Police for more than 1,000 people to be prosecuted for taking part in climate change protests. The Shadow Attorney General, Shami Chakrabarti, said the police should remember they're not prosecutors or judges. Charlotte Gallagher reports.
The Extinction Rebellion protest brought parts of London to a standstill for 10 days last month. The demonstrations weren't violent, but the government said they disrupted the lives of many hundreds of thousands of hard-working Londoners. Around 1,100 people were arrested on suspicion of public order offences. More than 70 have already been charged, and the Met Police is planning to send every case to prosecutors. Policing the demonstrations cost the force over £7.5 million, and senior officers are keen to deter others from taking similar action. But Shami Chakrabarti says police should remember their role is to safeguard the rights of peaceful protesters. She insists a Labour government would ensure the right to peaceful protest is robustly protected.
President Trump has pledged to address the trade imbalance between Japan and America as he arrived in Tokyo for a state visit. During the next 4 days, Mr. Trump will play golf with Japan's Prime Minister, watch sumo wrestling and meet the country's new emperor. From Tokyo, Rupert Wingfield-Hayes reports.
Mr. Trump has landed in Tokyo with his mind on trade. Having unleashed a tariff war on China, the US president now has his sights set on Japan. Speaking to business leaders shortly after arriving, he said trade between the US and Japan has to be fairer.
I would say that Japan has had a substantial edge for many, many years, but that's okay. Maybe that's why you like us so much. But we'll get it a little bit more fair, I think. I think we'll do that.
In the hope of heading off a trade war, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is rolling out the most lavish of welcomes. He has made sure Donald Trump is the first world leader to meet Japan's new Emperor Naruhito. Tomorrow, Mr. Trump will be the guest of honour at the final of the big summer sumo tournament, where he will present a special prize. It is another rare privilege.
An international tribunal has ruled that Russia must immediately release 24 Ukrainian naval servicemen and 3 of its navy vessels that it seized off the coast of Crimea last year. Russia had refused to participate at the hearing at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea in Germany. Here's our Europe regional editor, Danny Eberhard.
The incident in November dramatically escalated tensions between Russia and Ukraine. The Ukrainian vessels had tried to pass through the Kerch Strait, the only access to Ukrainian ports on the Sea of Azov. Russia has controlled the strait since annexing Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. Russian Coast Guard boats fired on the vessels before boarding them. Moscow accuses the sailors of violating its maritime border. Russia is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, but the chances of it abiding by the tribunal's provisional ruling appear minimal. The tribunal did not uphold Ukraine's request for Russia to suspend the trial of its servicemen, but it said both sides should refrain from any action that would aggravate the dispute.
Sport now, and Celtic have won the Scottish Cup final to complete the so-called treble-treble, their 3rd domestic treble in a row. With the details and the rest of the news, here's